All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim, out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, from upon your houses. Hey, we're back out here, man, through the grace and mercy of the Heavenly Father Yahweh and His only beloved begotten Son Yahweh Shai, to continue to preach this gospel, which is this good news. Part of that good news, man, is, hey, we're watching our enemy, right? You Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right, as well as you Israelite foreigners, right, which are Israelites that through the diaspora have been scattered in to these different nations and throughout time began to look like those nations, right? But yet to the lineage of their father are Israelites. Right, we are watching, right, the downfall of our enemy. Right, there's a lot of things that are ultimately transpiring, especially over there, on the eastern hemisphere of the world. Iran is, bombing U.S. bases, and a whole bunch. Right, what they're saying about 46, to 50 U.S. Military members have ultimately, been killed in those strikes. But we understand that it's a lot more than that. Right, Esau, ultimately controls, the media, and he's not reporting, everything that's going on. Right, you got videos of when America ultimately had struck Iran, right, and their, military equipment, jets, so on and so forth. Right, they were really just pictures painted on the ground. Right, and America spent millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, right, trying to destroy Iran's, military vehicles, if you will. But hey, they look like fools at the end of the day, right? And we understand that Israel is being bombarded by Iran, right? Israel is being completely just obliterated, by Iran. Those that Iron Dome, missile defense system is not working. There's a lot going on over there, man, that's ultimately not being reported, that's not, being talked about right here, in the mainstream news in America, right? Most of these people, they don't understand or fully know what is transpiring, over there in, the East, right? Which the world, it calls the Middle East, right? We know it's just the Eastern hemisphere of the world, but there's a lot going on, and really, again, none of these people really, know or understand what is going on, and it's only going to continue to get worse, right? There's been, blackouts, reported in Iran and now in Iraq, right? News, and information is not going in or out, right? So we really, really don't know for the most part, right, what is really taking place, but we understand that this right here is the beginning of World War III. Right, the war to end all wars, right? The Valley Yahweh Shaphat. It's all happening right now, which again, beginning with, the elder apostles of Great Millstone on down, right? The true prophets of the Heavenly Father and His only beloved begotten Son, right, are here on the scene today, right? Just as they've always been on the scene, going back to the time of Genesis in the very beginning, right? With Adam and Eve, there's always been prophets that are on the scene. And see, the true prophets are back on the scene today, and they've been warning you. Right, we've been warning y'all for years, right? The elder apostles for decades, and even their elders, right? Going back to 1969 when Abba Bivens came on the scene, we've been telling y'all for years that this is what was ultimately going to transpire. We were telling y'all for years that this is what's going to happen, and now we're telling y'all, right now that it's here, it's only going to continue to get worse, man. Which again is it's a beautiful sight, because again we're watching the downfall of our enemy. Right, Esau, Edom, right? You Israelites, your enemy is the self-proclaimed so-called white man, right? And it's not a thing. It's not about color, right? It's not about color. It's about the race of people that you are, right? The Edomites, right, have ultimately, which is their blessing, right, to ultimately, have the fatness of the earth, right, to basically rule the world in the current state it is, right? Job 9:24. Right, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. This is part of their blessing, right? So we understand that Esau has gone into these different nations, and really taken over, their country, right? Taking over their culture, you know, and so on and so forth, right? And even, you know, mingled, right, with those nations, man. So, you know, you even got, you know, Edomites, right, that look like so-called black folks, man, you know. So just, you know, just making that point, right? It's not a color thing, right? It's really, you know, a race thing, right? The Edomites as a race, right? They are the wicked, right? But we understand that predominantly majority of them are the self-proclaimed so-called white folks, man, right? Starting with the elite banker families, right? All the way down to even these regular peons that are out here today, right? They are the wicked that the Bible speaks of, pursuing to Malachi 1 and 4, the border of wickedness. And see, they're being brought down, right? They're being revealed at such a high and alarming rate. You know, it's really beautiful, man. Let's grab this precept real quick. You know, came to mind. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. It says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." And he's being revealed at an all-time high, right? Again, starting with the elite banker families on down, right? This whole cabal is being revealed, right? Those who rule the world are ultimately being revealed, right? All the wickedness that they were doing, you know, behind scenes, you know, is all coming to the forefront, right? As we read in Luke 8 and 17, Luke 12 and 2, there's nothing that shall be hid that should not be made manifest and come abroad, right? So it's all coming out, right, through the spirit and power of the Heavenly Father Yahweh and his only beloved begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, right? His true name is Yahweh Shai, and the Lord is revealing it, you know. So he's being revealed, man. And again, right, we're seeing that at one point, right, Esau was ruling the world, right? Esau was, you know, he had the people deceived that he was some kind of, you know, godly or righteous person, you know, because again, he did what, right? He changes all the, you know, he covered up the faces of the judges thereof, right? He turned these so-called black men, right, dark-skinned men, right, into and made them look like, you know, himself. You know, especially our Lord, you know, Yahweh Shai, again, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. According to the Bible, he's a so-called black man, right? You read that in Revelations, the 1st chapter, right, verses 13 on down, right? He's a so-called black man, right? He has woolly hair, right? And his skin was as if it was burned in a furnace, right? So he's a dark-skinned man. You know, he's a very austere, he's a very manly man, you know? But Esau made him to be, you know, some passive, aggressive, you know, or some passive, not even aggressive, some passive, you know, pushover, right? Soft-spoken, you know, flamer, if you will, right? But in reality, he wasn't, you know, and all it was to do was to ultimately have the world look at him as if he's the chosen nation of the Most High, but he's not. Right? Again, he is the wicked that the Bible speaks of, and he's being revealed who he is, what his agenda is, right? What he ultimately plans, you know, for the world is all coming to the forefront, you know? And again, right, for so long he's deceived the world to, you know, have these people look at him like he's this, you know, this godly man. But now, right, you got all these different nations just saying no. we ain't fucking with you. We know who you are. Right, we see what you're trying to do, and we don't want no parts of it. Right, we don't want no parts of it. Right, Jeremiah 51 and verse 7. It says what? It says Babylon. We in America, right? Because this is, you know, their cash cow, right? This is their, you know, their source, right, for money. Right, the elites, right, Esau, Edom, and so on and so forth. This is where they have set up shop, you know, and this is really their source of power, America, right? The dollar, you know. It says Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, right? The Lord ultimately, you know, as you read in Daniel 2 and 21, he setteth up kings, he removeth kings, right? The Lord set Esau, Edom up in power, right, to have rule over this world, right? But we understand that he's been doing it, he's been ruling wickedness, you know. It says Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand and made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad, right? And at one point, again, these nations were bugged out, right? They had ultimately taken part in sipping on that Babylon juice, right? Which is, you know, that wine is symbolic for that philosophy, right? That way of life that America's been pushing out there, you know. We're seeing it. It's been pushed out, and now the nations are seeing it, you know. And now this is why you see all these different so-called Muslim nations, right, coming after, you know, America, right? They're banding together, you know, and coming after America, man. You know, they're tired of the wickedness that's being, you know, perpetrated and pushed and exalted in the earth, you know. And this is why we're constantly saying, hey, the Lord's gonna bring this place down, man. You know, it says Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed, right? And America is going down, and there's nothing that you can do, right, to try to bring America back, right? It says we would have healed Babylon, right? But she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies, right? So again, right, America, right, your shame is being seen, right? Shameful spewing is upon Esau's glory, man. You know, with all this information coming out in these nations, right, saying, no, we know who you are, you know, which again, it's a beautiful sight for us, man, because as we see his decline, right, we're starting to see through the spirit our ascension, man. You know, Esau has, you know, he's been ruling for so long, and we're approaching, right, that 250th year, that 250th birthday, right, of America, which when you go into the history and you look at it, majority of these empires and these rulerships, right, around the 250th year, right, is when they drastically decrease. They ultimately fall, right, roughly around this time. And again, we're seeing Esau being revealed, right, which is a part of that, you know, a part of that that decline, right. We're seeing his power, right, declining, right. These nations are ultimately firing on American soldiers, right. The first time ever, right? You got this much damage happening to the American military, you know, and there's nothing that a Babylon can do, because Babylon wasn't prepared for, you know, what is transpiring, for Iran's response. Esau was not prepared for Iran's response, you know. So this is why you really don't see too much of a you know, a reaction from America, because they don't know what to do. You know, Iran has ultimately figured America out, man. You know, and bros were saying yesterday at the, you know, at the camp, that there's got to be a mole within the American military that ultimately is giving, you know, Iran, you know, some insight, right? And as you know, they're exploiting that. You know, the kinks in the armor, you know, the holes in the armor, right? The weak spots, right? Iran is exploiting that. You know, and Esau's getting his fucking ass whooped, man. You know, and he don't know how to respond, man. You know, which again, this is all, and just getting back to the point that I wanted to make, man, is this is all beautiful, right? For those who are in the know, for those, you know, who Yahweh Bashim Al Shai has ultimately opened up the eyes, the spiritual eyes, to see, hey, this is a beautiful sight, man. Because again, we're watching our enemy lose. For so long he's been in power. For so long he's been winning. You know, winning, if you will. But now, that's all coming to an end. Job 14:5, the Lord gave him bounds that he cannot pass. Esau hit that fucking wall, man. Esau climbed to the top of his, you know, the peak of his power, right? And now he's starting to decline, which is why we're seeing him, you know, ultimately you know, try to hurry, you know, this NWO up, right? You got Trump basically stating that, hey, you know, we need to hurry up and get this act, right? The Clarity Act, the Genius Act, the Stable Act, right? Ultimately passed and through Congress, right? So that way they can hurry up, you know, and establish this NWO. You know, push the micro C-hip, right? Get everybody C-hipped, you know, so that way he can ultimately set himself up as a perpetual ruler over the masses forever, right? And it's happening, right? You got Visa and Bridge, right, which is owned by Stripe, you know, and they're going and pushing that, you know, stablecoin infrastructure into, you know, 100+ countries, right, as of right now, right? So it's all moving, right? Which we know that you know, before World War III can fully pop off, we understand that the RFID micro C-hip has to be made mandatory. But see, these things are happening, right, simultaneously, right? As we've been telling y'all, right after the C-hip gets made mandatory, and almost, you know, maybe a month, maybe 2 months after, you know, the C-hip gets made mandatory, what's going to happen? Those nuclear missiles are going to be used, and it could be even sooner, right? It could be as soon as it becomes made mandatory, a day or two, or maybe a week or two, right, afterwards, and then you got the ICBM nuclear missiles. So we very well could be out of here, you know, roughly by, you know, in the next few months, man. You know, by the end of the year, you know, and that's all, you know, what we hope for, man. right? We're part of the hopeful elect, where we hope that we're a part of the elect. We hope we're part of the ones that are ultimately going to get delivered out of this place, man. You know, because we see right through, you know, Esau and his agenda and his plans, and we see that the last two major prophecies, right, are being fulfilled right before our eyes as we read Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. You know, matter of fact, let's grab that real quick. You know, the Spirit be rolling, man, because I had a whole different lesson plan, but hey, this is what the Spirit wants me to, you know, go in on. You know, this is Habakkuk 2 and verse 1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And we're on our watch, man, right? Well, you know, scriptures say a prudent man foreseeth the evil, right? Well, how do you foresee the evil? Just walking around, being on your phone, scrolling all day? No, you have to actually be engaged, right? It's a verb, right? It's an action. You got to go and you got to look into these articles. You got to go into the scriptures and filter those articles and these different events, bills, policies, and so on and so forth, right? These different wars, right, that are happening in the world, and filter them through the scriptures, man. And that takes work, right? And the prophets do the heavy work, you know? And then bring that to the people and give you the proper understanding. As it says right here, it says in Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it, right? And we're making it plain, you know? And again, we're in, you know, and I'm just going to reiterate something that the Elder Tazabah, you know, had said yesterday at camp. We're in the most plain time right now, right? We're in the most plain time right now because, again, it's easy to understand that we're at the end. Everybody understands that we're at the end, right? You got more and more people are quoting the Bible. More and more people are starting to really understand that we are at the end of the world, right? You got the American military is being told that this war with Iran, right, is to spark Armageddon. You know, they know what's going on. They know what's about to transpire. Right, these Edomites, they know what's going on, man. They've been watching the prophets, you know, and everything that the prophets have been saying is happening, you know. It's happening right now. You know, as it says right here, verse 3, it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. Habakkuk 2 and 3, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, and we're in that time. Right, with these visions, right, these prophecies, when you go into that word vision, it goes back to prophecy, right? These prophecies are being fulfilled, man. It says right here, it says, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. It's speaking, you know, and everyone's holding their tongue. Everyone's sitting, you know, on the edge of their seat, right, with their nails digging into the edge of their seat as well, right, seeing what's about to transpire. But see, through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, we know what's going on, right? We know what's happening, you know. It says, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. And it's not tarrying anymore, man. You know, we're in Jacob's trouble, right? It's only going to continue to get worse from here. We're in World War III, and it's only going to continue to, you know, get worse from here. You know, the famine of the word is about to hit. You know, a famine of food and water, right, is about to take place. Right, prices are about to skyrocket, and you people are going to be in the worst case that you've ever been in, the worst case scenario that you've ever been in your entire life. You know. Shit is about to hit the fan, man, and it's not a joke, right? This isn't something that you can sit here and try to pass off as, oh man, you know, we dealt with the, you know, the 1973, you know, oil embargo, and we dealt with the 2008 oil prices and the housing market, and everything went back to normal. No, this is not a time like any of those times, right? We understand that it's going to be so bad that Michael the Archangel is going to have to step in, man, you know, pursuing to Daniel's 12 and 1, you know. Let's grab that real quick. This is Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, right? Such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. So we're talking about in history, right? A time like no other, right? Ever. You know, right? It says, and at that time shall thy people be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. And that's talking about the elect, man. Right? The elect are going to be delivered, right, from these said perils, man. You know, we read that in 2 Esdras, the 9th chapter. You know, when all hell goes to break loose, the Lord's going to deliver the elect, right? And it says 2 Esdras 9 and 7. And everyone that shall be saved right? Because we understand, right, this is speaking about the elect, because, you know, when you go to Matthew's, the 24th chapter, right, Yahweh Shai is going to command the angels, right, to gather the elect, right, to save the elect, right? It says, and everyone that shall be saved and shall be able to escape by his works and by faith whereby ye have believed shall be preserved from the said perils, and shall see my salvation in my land and within my borders, for I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. So the Lord has a certain group of people, right, called the elect out of the nation of Israel, right, that have been foreordained, right, meaning from the very, as the scriptures say, right, the end is manifest from the beginning. So from the very beginning, the Lord ultimately set a group of people apart to go through these different trials and tribulations and afflictions and sufferings and so on and so forth, and to eventually, right, get the victory over those situations and over this world, this current state of the world, you know, and to see the Lord's salvation, you know, and to receive those blessings, man, you know, which, Lord, will we be of that number? That's what's coming, man. We're seeing the downfall of our enemy, which means our ascension is taking place, right, in the spirit, and only those, right, who the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai is dealing with are going to be able to see it, you know, because again, right, for so long we've been on bottom, right, for so long we've been under this damn devil's hand and just, you know, getting beat the fuck down, but that's over, right? We go to Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 21. It says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, right? Rejoice and be glad, man, right? The last little bit of time that you do have, hey, soak it up, man, right? It's a lot. It says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked, right? That cup, right? That cup is talking about that cup of slavery, right? That judgment that we have ultimately been put on, you know, that we're still currently in, right? We're still under the hand of this damn devil, man, right? We're still under the captivity of this damn devil, and that's because we went off, right? That's because we fucked up. But see, the Lord is turning, you know, is turning the pages, man. Those same judgments and punishments that were put upon us, right? The Lord is putting upon Esau, Edom, our enemies, right? Pursuant to Deuteronomy 30 and verse 7, you know, the Lord is changing the tide, you know. Now I'm going to jump back to this, but I want to jump to Isaiah the 51st chapter, you know, and I'll start at verse 17. It says, awake, awake, stand up, O Jerusalem, which has drunk at the hand of the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai, the cup of his fury. So we've been drinking of that cup of slavery, right? The curses, right? Pursuant to Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, starting at the 16th verse on down. Those are all the curses, right? From 16 to 68, right? All the curses that we have ultimately been, you know, receiving and going through and dealing with because we fucked up, right? It says, thou hast drunken the dregs of the cup of trembling and wrung them out. There is none to guide her among all the sons whom she hath brought forth. Neither is there any that taketh her by the hand of all the sons that she hath brought up. Right? You got the scriptures talk about, you know, and you know, no man shall buy her, meaning no man is going to redeem us out of the hand of our enemies, right? Even of our own people, right? Malcolm X, you know, Martin Luther King, you know, Jesse Jackson, and you know, all these different civil rights leaders and these different celebrities and people that, you know, within the nation of Israel that might have some type of power in this world or some type of money. Hey, there's nothing that they can do, man. You know, they can't get us out of this situation because it's the Lord that's going to get us out of this situation, man. Right? It says, thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets as a wild bull in the net. And you see Jake, man, right? You go into the hoods, the barrios and whatnot, man. You got Jake at these corner stores. Jake's at the, you know, Jake at the, you know, the gas stations and whatnot, man. You know, hey, when a cop pulls up, hey, what happens? They scatter, man. You know, which is part of the curses as well, right? When our enemy, you know, comes after us, we're going to flee 7 ways, man. You know, we're going to flee 7 ways, right? But see, again, that's coming to an end, you know. You know, got passed through, little, you know, park maintenance guy. But it says thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets as a wild bull in the net, they are full of the fury of the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua, the rebuke of thy power. Therefore, hear now this, thou afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Right? You know, the Lord's saying, hey, listen up, man. Right? Because we're the afflicted, right? We're the poor and we're the needy. You know? We're at the bottom. You know, it says right here, verse 22, Isaiah 51:22, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, thy power, that pleadeth the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of thy hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury. Thou shalt no more drink it again. Right? We read in the scriptures, you know, I think it's Jeremiah the 8th chapter, or St. John the 8th chapter, right? Matter of fact, let's verify that, and we'll come back. St. John, what is that, 8:32, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, Yahweh Shai said it. It says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So, you know, the slavery here went from a physical, you know, in chains, getting beat up, getting eaten by Esau, Edom, you know, which, you know, Esau's still, you know, snatching up our kids and doing that, you know, the achroming and eating our people and whatnot. But it went from a physical slavery to a mental slavery, right? You ultimately thinking that, you know, that this is it and that you got some kind of freedom in this world because you're able to pick between, you know, which bag of chips you want to eat, not knowing that it's all GMO. Well, I mean, Esau been saying that, but people think that, no, it's all good. You know, it's all good, that this man doesn't want to kill us, and that's just how things go. And so, no, this devil is trying to kill you, right? Our people, you know, they're oblivious, right, to Esau's tactics. But see, again, right, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, you know, has ultimately, you know, uncovered that veil, right, allowing us to see, you know, through this damn devil and his agenda and what he's been doing, you know. So, hey, the Lord is allowing us to be free from that mental slavery, that mental hold that this damn devil has upon us, right? We're ultimately we're just waiting, right, for the physical part, right, to ultimately end, which means Yahweh, which is when Yahweh Shai comes and delivers the elect. Lord, will we be of that number? That's when it's gonna end, you know. But the Lord's telling us, hey, you're not after that, you're not going into captivity after this, man. We're not going back under the hands of these devils, man. Once they flee into these bunkers, right, to get away from, you know, the nuclear hellfire that's about to transpire, they're not going to come out of those holes, you know, out of those bunkers and continue to get back in power. That's not going to happen, you know, because if they would have it, they would keep us as slaves forever, right? That's what Esau wants, right? That's the whole the C-hip, the micro C-hip, right? When you go into Revelations 13 and verse 16 and it talks about the mark, right, the M-A-R-K. When you go into that, one of the definitions, it says a metaphor, right, as a badge of servitude, right? Because that's what Esau wants. Esau wants you to take that, right, so that way you can ultimately establish. It's a digital oil, right, coined by the elder apostle Tahar, right? That digital oil. When you go into the Hebrews or go into the Old Testament, right? I think it's Deuteronomy the 15th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, right? It tells you that if a man has a slave and the slave is pleased to dwell with his master, right? Once it's time for him to be set free, right, that 7th year, right, it's time for him to go. If that servant ultimately loves and wants to dwell with that master, hey, well, guess what? The master is to take an earring and thrust it in his ear, right? That oil, thrust it in his ear, right? Which is basically a badge, right? A permanent servitude, meaning you're willing to permanently allow this man to be over you, you know. And if you take the Charagma, that's what you're allowing, right, for Esau Edom to do, to be a perpetual ruler over you, meaning you're going to be his perpetual slave, and he will do with you as he will. You know, that's Esau's whole agenda. But see, again, right, we understand that, you know, and we understand that we want Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, you know, to rule over us, right? Not Esau Edom, right? The basis of men. No, hell no. You know, fuck this damn devil, man. You know, you know. We want this damn devil to go down, and see, again, we're seeing that, and it's a blessing. You know, the Lord is taking away that you know, that cup of slavery, that cup of, you know, with these curses and whatnot from us. You know, we'll go back to Isaiah 51 and read the last verse, verse 23. It says, but I will put it, well, I'll read verse 22 again. It says, thus saith Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, thy power. It says, that pleadeth the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of thine hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury, and thou shalt no more drink it again. Right. Right? Why? Because Esau gonna be drinking it, right? Verse 23. But I will put it into the hand of them that afflict thee, which have said to thy soul, bow down that we may go over. And thou hast laid thy body as the ground and as the street to them that went over. Right? Esau used us, right? To further heighten himself, to further exalt himself. You know? Right? Esau put us in slavery, made us to build up to his kingdom, and then turned around and was like, you know what? Yeah, I did this. You know, I did that. I did this. I did that. You know? But he used us to do it, man. You know? Esau utilizing us, right, to, again, further, heighten himself, man. You know, but see, he's being brought down, man. Right? And Yahweh B'Shem El Shai is going to put all those curses right upon him. Matter of fact, I'll grab this, since I quoted it earlier. This is Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 7. It says, and Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee, man. You know, all those curses, right, that we have gone through and dealt with, right, are being put on our enemies, and we see it. Esau's losing, man. Right now, I'm seeing more and more videos of white on white crime. But Esau's beating the shit out of each other, man. Right? For so long, you've been saying, what you still, it's like you still do, right? You still see, World Star Hip Hop, so on and so forth, Jake fighting each other and this and the third, and whatnot. But you're starting to see more and more of these Edomites, right, being put in bad positions. Right, Edomites getting arrested by the cops, right, and just being flabbergasted that they're being arrested. You know, more and more these Edomites are fighting each other, and they're not really banding with each other, and their true colors coming out. You know, just being evil as fuck. You know, Lord is revealing them at an all-time high and showing everybody who they truly are, man. You know, they're not this so-called holy people that they portrayed themselves to be for so long. No, right? No, right? The Lord said, what? Is there no wisdom in the mountain of Esau, right? In the book of Obadiah, right? The Lord is taking away that wisdom, man, right? Him being able to deceive the people, him being able to, conjure up these good, plans that nobody can see through. No, that shit's over. It's done with. Right, we see that the Lord is tearing you down. Right, you devils down, man. The Lord is not you going down, man. It's a beautiful sight, you know. The Lord is turning the pages, man. You know, He's turning the pages. You devils are going to have to drink of that cup. You know, you're gonna have to drink of that cup, right? I think it's in Obadiah. Yes, Obadiah. Yeah, Obadiah. And this is fire. Obadiah and verse 15. It says, for the day of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai is near upon all the heathen, right? Because all the heathen are going to have to deal with it, right? Because the scriptures say that, there's not one nation that have not gotten of the spoils of Israel, right? At one point, Israelites have been slave unto every nation, in the world, right? There's 18 nations. One nation the Lord chose, which is the Israelites. That means the Israelites went into captivity 17 times, or under 17 different nations, man, multiple times. So all the nations are going to have to pay for what they did, especially the Edomites, man. Especially you fucking devils, man, because y'all did the worst. Y'all went the hardest, man. Look at this fucking rulership, right? For all the different rulerships we've known, or all the different captivities prior to this one, we've known who we were, We've known who we were, and and to a certain degree, right? Some of those nations where they had mercy on us, allowing us to continue to serve our power, But we were just tributary and so on and so forth. But now, Esau, right? It was just saying in Psalms the 83rd chapter, right? He made it to where the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. And how did he do that? Right? By, these different chemtrails, GMO foods, which ultimately destroy your mind, destroy your body, right? So you can't think, right? That 40-hour work week, right? Some of us are doing 60s, So you don't have time to think. You don't have time to read. You don't have time to study, right? The different trends that he puts out there, what he pushing, this nigga music, right? YN music, you know, to where it's like, okay, well, you know, like wickedness and a low vibration is being pushed. No truth or no high vibrational, you know, music or anything like that is being pushed, man, right? So, you know, all the like music going back into, you know, the early, you know, I want to say the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you know what I mean? Which, I mean, even in the 90s, music started getting a little, you know, like Tupac, NWA, so on and so forth. But prior to that, music was actually real music. It spoke about truth, right? It spoke about facts, you know? But now you just, it's bitches, cars, drugs, money. That's it. And that's what's pushed, right? So Esau did that. Esau has studied, you know, vibrations. Esau studied music. Esau studied medicine. Esau studied, you know, sound waves and so on and so forth, man. He studied the human body, you know, and he utilized all that information, right? The scriptures say that the heart of every one of them is deep, right? Esau did all his research so that he can make it to where the name of Israel be no more remembrance. And he did that by destroying the mind, destroying the body, you know, promoting, you know, wickedness rather than righteousness, man, you know. So Esau's going to have to pay for that, right? This is Obadiah verse 15. It says, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head, you know. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. Right? So you're going to have to, you know, ultimately drink of that cup, man. That cup of slavery, right? Those curses, right? You Edomites. Y'all gonna have to drink of that cup, man. You know, all you heathens, right? But mainly you Edomites, right? Those are the ones that we really, right? As a you know, as a body, we really want to see you Edomites go into fucking slavery, man. And you're gonna have to. That's thus saith the Lord. Our cap, as we read, you know, the Lord is gonna, you know, he's taking that cup out of our hand and putting it in the hand of our enemies, man. Those who have afflicted us, right? Those who put us in chains, those who beat us, those who ate us. You know, we're not gonna be at the bottom for very much longer, man. We're at the end of this way, and everybody sees it. We're at the end. We're at the complete end. They were talking about, I remember my mom when I was a little kid telling me, oh, they've been saying we're at the end for years, for generations. No, we're really here now, man. Right, the end really started when Yahweh Shai, you know, ultimately came on the scene. You know, from that moment when Yahweh Shai was ultimately killed, right, and he rose up, you know, after 3 days, right? And now it was on the right hand of the Heavenly Father, and he sent down the Comforter, right? And now we're in this time, you know, where we're able to remember who we are, right? And continue to preach this gospel, this good news, you know, to wake up and activate the elect of the nation of Israel. And now it's going faster and faster and faster, right? The scriptures say to pray for a few days, right? And we've been doing that. And now we're seeing everything it get faster and faster and faster and speeding up, right? As we see this devil going down, we see ourselves through the Spirit getting lifted up, man. You know, we're no longer gonna have to be in this state of you know, crying and dying, you know, and being stressed out, and you know, are people killing themselves, offing themselves? No, man, that shit's done. That shit is done, right? Going to Revelations, the 20th chapter. It says, Revelations 20 and verse 4. It's like in Revelations 21. I'll start at verse 1. Revelations 21 and 1. It says, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And this is not talking about an actual new planet being built. No. Right? When you go into that word new, it goes back to what? To renew. Right? The Lord is gonna revamp the earth. Is gonna put life back into the earth. Right? Because the one who has had rulership over it has done nothing but take life from it, right? You read that in Revelations, the 6th chapter, man. You know, that he you know, to take peace from the earth, right? Life, true life, right, is ultimately peace, you know. But Esau took all that away, so we even see the earth dying, you know, with this devil in rulership, right? It says, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea, right? The current state of the world right now, right, was ultimately passed away. Esau being taken out of power, you know, and a righteous rulership being established. We read that in 2 Timothy or 2 Peter's, right, the 3rd chapter, right, looking for a new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness, right? That's what it's talking about, right? The current state of this world is going to pass away, right? As the scriptures say, the fashion of this world passeth away, right? But those that do the will of the Most High abideth forever. So what we see now eventually is going to end, and it's going to end soon, right? We have all the different signs, right? All the, you know, the major prophecies are, you know, they're unfolding, you know. We see where this is going, man. It says, continue on. It says, and I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, right? Which Jerusalem is a people before it was a place, right? So he's not talking about an actual city being brought down out of the sky. He's talking about the people, you know. Let's see if we can go into that word, you know, Jerusalem, and see what it says, you know, in that right, it says in New Jerusalem, I receives, it says Strong's G 2419, right? It says right here, right, it says the heavenly Jerusalem, right, that is the heavenly abode of the Most High, Hamashiach, the angels, saints of the Old and New Testament periods, and those Christians, right, which we know the true Christians are those who believe in Yahweh Shai Hamashiach, right, which would, you know, rightfully be called Hamashiachim, right, but we understand that this is talking about the Israelites, right? It says, and those Christians that are alive at Hamashiach's return, right? So it's talking about, again, those, the elect of the nation of Israel, man. You know, again, coming down, right? Coming down out of the sky, right? It says, and I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from the Most High out of heaven, right? Prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And we understand, right, when you go into Isaiah, the 54th chapter, you know, Isaiah 54 and verse 5, it says, for thy maker is thine husband, right? We understand that Jeremiah, in Jeremiah, the 6th chapter, it tells you that Israel is likened unto a comely and delicate woman. You know, speaking about the nation of Israel, it says, Isaiah 54 and 5, for thy maker is thine husband, the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The power of the whole earth shall he be called. So again, this is speaking about, again, the Israelites, right, coming down from the Most High, you know, adorned as a bride for thy husband, right? There's Israelites being made white and clean and perfect, right? For who? For Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, you know. Let's continue on. Verse 3, it says, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of the Most High is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and the Most High himself shall be with them and be their power. Right. Verse 4, here's the point. It says, and the Most High shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Right? Everything that we're dealing with here, everything that we're dealing with in this world and have been dealing with for decades, centuries, right? All that's coming to a screeching halt. You know? And it's gonna come to a screeching halt very soon, right? Very, very, very soon. And see, again, you got the prophets on the highways and byways telling you what? Rest with us, man. You know? Rest with us, man, because in the world you shall have tribulation, but in me ye shall have peace. We're truly living, right, in Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, man. You know, in this truth, right? And we understand what is coming. We understand what is the end all be all for us. It's not the current state of the world. It's not us being in captivity forever, right? It's us being, you know, cleansed, right, from following the ways of this world, being cleansed from the wickedness that we have been soaked in for so long, and to fight, you know, for the scriptures, fight for the law, statutes, commandments, fight for our heritage, man, our power, you know, and to be forgiven, right, and to be, you know, again, made white and clean, you know, and in doing so receive salvation and receive those blessings, those exceeding precious promises, and to fulfill this scripture. You know, to fulfill all these scriptures that we're reading, you know, to be put on top, man. That's what's coming for us, man. All we have to do is continue to believe and maintain in the spirit until the end, until the deliverance comes. You know, let me grab this one as well. In 2nd Esdras, the 8th chapter, right, which ultimately touches a little bit more on what we just read in Revelation's 20th chapter, or the 21st chapter, right? This is Revelation's 2nd Esdras 8, in verse 52, right? He's speaking to the elect, right? It says, "For unto you is paradise open. The tree of life is planted. The time to come is prepared," right? Yahweh Shai said, "Go, watch," right? I go and to prepare a place for you. You know, right? The kingdom is already prepared, man. We're just waiting for the movie to play out. You know, it says, "Plenteousness is made ready. A city is builded," and that's talking about the kingdom, right? 2nd Esdras, the 7th chapter, right? It talks about that city, right, full of all good things. You know, it says, "And rest is allowed." When do we have rest here, man? When do we actually get to chill? When do we actually get to freaking, you know what I mean? You might be chilling in your house, and if you randomly you get a fucking goddamn ICE agent coming and kicking in your door. They don't need a warrant, right? They don't need a warrant because they're not a criminal. They're not set up to handle criminal offenses, right? Where you need to, you know, go to a judge and get a criminal warrant and whatnot. They don't need that. They can just come and kick in your fucking door and come snatch you the fuck up and not have to tell you where you're going. They don't have to explain to you what you did. They got federal immunity, right? We could just be chilling. You might have done nothing fucking wrong. You went to work. You were an upstanding citizen. You paid your taxes. You this, that, and third. And they still come in and fuck with you, man. So when do we get rest here, man? You might be able to go to a park and be able to walk the fuck around. You know? You might be able to chill. Hey, but guess what? You still got cops lurking around, you know, waiting to see you do something wrong so they can snatch you up. You did nothing wrong. You know? But that goes back to, you know, us being under the curses, us being, you know, but still, nonetheless, we ain't got no rest here. That's the point. Micah 2:10, "Arise and depart, for this is not your rest." This is not a place where we can actually chill. You know? We can't go and go and really have fun, right, with our kids and enjoy our kids because, you know, living here in Arizona especially, you know, because this is the #1 child, you know, sex trafficking state in the entire United States, but really everywhere. You know, it's being exposed. You got these PDF files everywhere, man. You know? People wanting to essay your children, man. You know, when you're not looking, snatch your kids up. This and that. You gotta always be on guard, man. You know? In the kingdom, we're gonna be able to enjoy our kids. We're gonna be able to actually have fun and not have to worry about that. You know, at all. Because all this shit that we see here, that shit's gonna be done away with, right? It says, I'll read it again, right? 2nd Esdras 8:52, it says, "For unto you is paradise open. The tree of life is planted. The time to come is prepared. Plenteousness is made ready. A city is builded and rest is allowed, yea, perfect goodness and wisdom." Right? "The root of evil is sealed up from you." Right? "Weakness and the moth is hid from you, and corruption is fled into hell to be forgotten. Sorrows are past, and in the end is showed the treasure of immortality." And see, this is what the elect are going to receive. Really, eventually, all Israel is going to receive this, man. But we understand the elect is going to receive it, right? Having that first dominion, being the first ones to receive it. And the rest of our people who die on this side, right, are going to come back to the loins of the elect, right? Being birthed back into the kingdom, back into righteousness. And then they're going to receive it, man. So eventually, all Israel is going to receive this, man. And this is beautiful, man. This is something that we should be constantly meditating on and constantly desiring every single day, man. You know, why would you? We've seen the result of wickedness. We've seen the result of being at the bottom for so long, right? You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you act like this is it. This is our end all be all. This is what you consider to be your freaking your heaven. You know? You got our people being snatched up by ICE agents. They didn't even do nothing wrong. They might have been here 15, 20, 30 years being snatched up, man. Did nothing wrong. Nothing but contribute to this this country and get snatched up because they deem you to be illegal. When matter of fact, the so-called white folks came here illegally. Look at all the different treaties and stuff like that that they done broke. They're still considered illegal immigrants. But they're coming after the so-called illegal immigrants that were here on this land prior to them being here. Come on, man. This is what we have to deal with. But see, again, this is all gonna be undone. It's gonna be undone. We're no longer gonna be at the bottom. We're no longer gonna have to sit here and suffer, right? This devil having rulership over us, man. You know? Let's go back to that Lamentations and 4 in the very last verse. Right? We read verse 21, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom. Right? But you're gonna have to drink of that cup. Lamentations 4 and 22, it says, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. It's talking about you Israelites, right? It says, he will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins, right? And this is what's taking place right now, right? Yahweh Bashim El Shai has got this shameful spewing upon his glory, right? The Lord is revealing who this damn devil is, and soon he gonna drink of that cup. You know? Everything ultimately happens, right, in gradualism. It takes time, right? And the Lord has been doing this over time. Right? You know, this whole war that's going on, right? You had Iran saying that we've been perfecting our arrows for 20 years. You know? They've been waiting for this moment. Right? And the Lord put it in their mind to prepare for this moment. Right? Proverbs 21 and 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and he turneth it whithersoever he will. So the Lord has put it in their mind to prepare for this very moment 20 years ago. And now look, now what's happening? You know, and again, it's a beautiful sight, man. You know, what does it say in Sirach? I brought it out many a times. Sirach 25 and verse 7, it says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th will I utter with my tongue, a man that hath joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. And we're watching the fall of our enemy, right? The self-proclaimed so-called white folks have been over us for so long, and now we're seeing their decline. They're being revealed that they're the most wicked people in all the earth, right? They're imposters. They stole a whole nation's identity, right? Trying to claim it as theirs, and it's being found out that they're not those people. You know, that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we are the true chosen nation of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, right? And his only beloved begotten son, Yahweh Shai. You know, all this information, like even the other nations outside of America, they know that, right? The former leader prior to Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran, stated prior, he said, why did the Israelites leave black and came back white? Why is that? It's because those who are over there in the land are imposters. They're not the real people. Because if they were, and they were truly the chosen nation of the Lord, and the Lord said what? That there would be no more wars. Right? That they would rule over the entire world, and the world would have to serve their God. Nobody does that. They're not the true chosen nation of the Heavenly Father and his only beloved begotten son. They're imposters, and they're the devil that the Bible speaks of. And the Lord is bringing them down. We see it happening right before our eyes, man. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows that we're at the end times, right? Everybody can say that, but how do you know? The prophets have been telling you, and they're telling you what's going to happen in the next few days, in the next coming months, weeks, days, years. You know, Esau is going to be brought down to the very bottom, man. And he's not going to rise up again, but we're going to rise up. We got next. You know, this is 2nd Esdras, chapter 6 and verse 7. It says, then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Right? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau, which is symbolic for that pulling down. And we're doing that through the Spirit. Right? By doing these street teachings and video epistles throughout the week, right? Throughout the days, the months, right? Doing the hard work, getting all this information and bringing it to you, making it plain upon tables that you may run that. Read it, you know? Giving you the proper understanding of the scriptures, man, which is revealing who he is and his agenda. This is what's happening in the spirit. And he's being pulled down, you know? But just as I like to also, you know, give an example, when somebody jumps into a water and they can't swim, right? And somebody jumps in to come after them. And well, what happens? That person that can't swim grabs the person that's trying to help them and pulls them down. Right? That person that pulled him down, he coming up for air while the other person's going down. Now they're drowning. And this is what's happening through the spirit. Esau's being pulled down. Right? It says, verse 9, it says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. We got next, man. You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans understand that we have next. The so-called white man is not going to rule forever. Right? Imagine you being in his spot, having all that money given to you freely, having the system be built by you, for you, and against them. Is that such a bad thing? You got a lot of so-called black folks that sit there and be like, oh, well, what about the white man? This nigga ain't never thought about you. He don't give a fucking rat's ass about you at all. He's proven that shit. Hundreds of years he's done prove that. Why are you so worried about him? No, it's called Stockholm Syndrome. It's because you love your captor. You've been under your captor for so long that you start to love that man. Or you start to love your captor. So you're all worried about what's going to happen to him. No, fuck that nigga, man. He's been said fuck us for so long. It's time to say fuck him. And that's what we're doing through the spirit, man. Fuck this devil. Fuck his system. Fuck his world. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua is going to tear this place down. And we're constantly praying for that. Because what is it going to be like for us, man? What is it going to be like for us? Brothers think about that all the time, man. You know, we can't wait. I mean, you know, hey, it's just figure of speech, right? We're gonna wait, right? Scriptures say to wait, until the Lord rises to the prey. You know what I mean? We're gonna wait for the Lord. Wait ye upon me, right? We're gonna wait upon Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua till he works things out. But we're already seeing everything being worked out. You know, we got next, man. And it's beautiful. We're no longer gonna be in captivity ever again. We're no longer going to be at the bottom of any nation ever again. We're going to be on top and we're going to rule forever, you know? Let me grab this and we'll start to close out. This is Zephaniah, the 3rd chapter. And I'll start at verse... you know what? I'll start at verse 14. Right? Zephaniah 3 and 14. It says, sing, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O Israel, be glad and rejoice with all the heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Right? This is a time to rejoice. Right? It's a time to be, you know, to be happy. Right? To rejoice. So our enemy is falling. You know. It says, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua hath taken away thy judgments, and he has cast out thine enemy. The King of Israel, even Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, is in the midst of thee. Thou shalt not see evil no more. And we read it. We've been reading it. Right, we read it in Revelations, right? 21, right? That sorrow is going to be past, right? All the things that are former, right, are going to be made new. We read it in 2nd Ezra, the 8th chapter, right? That rest, right? That sorrow is going to be past, right? That corruption is going to be sealed up from us, right? And now we're reading it here in the Old Testament, right? Which Apocrypha is the Old Testament, right? But we're reading it right here, right? We're not going to see any more evil. Right? We're not going to be at the bottom. They're not going to call us blacks anymore. They're not going to call us Native Americans or Indians. And they're going to call us Mexicans or Hispanics, which are all proverbs and bywords, man. We're Israelites. You know? We're Israelites. The true chosen nation of the Heavenly Father, His only beloved begotten Son. Right? And in the Hebrew, right, we're called Yasharallah. Right? He Prince Power. The Prince of the Power. Right? I'll continue on. Zephaniah 3 and 16. It says, in that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear thou not, and to Zion, let not thine hands be slack. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, thy power is in the midst of thee. In the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. And being in this state, man, is nothing but a burden. Being the poor and the needy in the world, it don't matter how much fucking money you got. First and foremost, right, the scriptures talk about trust not in uncertain riches. That money can be taken away from you at any moment. We've seen that with Kanye. We've seen that with, you know, all these different celebrities that wanted to go up against the so-called norm and speak about the wicked and speak about the so-called white folks and the system that was set up. They got their money taken away from them. So really, do you have a voice? Are you not in captivity? Are you not a fucking slave? They don't care about how many fucking millions you got. Come on, man. But the Lord said, what? He gonna gather us. Right? And that's the elect, right? Starting with the elect of the nation of Israel. Those who are truly repentant. Those who are of a contrite spirit, man. Those who understand and those who see that what we've been doing and following, right, has been wrong. That we have a heritage. We actually have a culture. It's called the Bible. You know? And this world has made it to where talking about the Bible and talking about religion and this and the third is like, it's like, oh, I don't want to hear that. Oh, I don't want to listen. That's okay. You can keep that same fucking energy. When the Most High comes back and the whole world is starting to see that the Lord's coming back, you gonna be a nigga that fucking dies, man. You gonna be that nigga that fucking perish right along with the same person who's been putting you in captivity for hundreds of years. That's okay. You could die with that nigga. And we're not gonna give a fuck because we see what is coming for us who truly believe. A fucking slave is gonna get the same punishment as his slave master? What the fuck? Why would you want that? But niggas want that. That's okay. Keep that shit. You know? The Lord's gonna gather the elect. I'll continue on the last couple verses. Zephaniah 3:19. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out. We were driven out. Who are the only nation that's been put on slave ships and been shipped out to all four corners of the world? The Israelites. Why is it you have a so-called white man, Tucker Carlson, questioning these so-called small hats, right? The Israelis and their rabbis and stuff like that about how they match up with the Bible, and they can't even give a proper answer. They can't even give you a reason why does the Bible say that they're going to go into Egypt again by way of ships? Why do they not match up with that? And why can't they give a proper answer on why their history doesn't match up with what the Bible says? But yet they claim to be the chosen nation that is spoken of to go through those things. The shit don't make no fucking sense. They got their own people, right? Questioning themselves, man. Because they're liars, they're imposters, they're fake. Right? It says, and gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. We've been put to shame. Hosea 1:10, it says what? In the place where it says, ye are not my people, ye should be called the children of the Most High. And we're being called that now. We've been being called that for years now, since our elder apostles of Great Millstone came on the scenes. And after that, and really more heavily since 2007, that YouTube era, right, where this word has been put on YouTube and been spread across the world. We're being called the children of Israel by these other nations because they've been known who the children of the children of Israel were. We are the only ones that didn't. You know? But the Lord's saying, what? I'm going to get you praise and fame in every land where you've been put to shame. So true that it rhymes. We're going to get that praise and fame, man. The nations are going to look at us and want to be us. Right? The nations, they want our style. They want our culture. But they don't want to be us. No, soon they're going to actually want to be just like us. And not in a sense of envy, not in a sense of covetousness, but in a sense of awe, in a sense of royalty, in a sense of loyalty, right? They're gonna want to actually be us, but in a right, in a good way. They want to be just like us because we set the standard of what it is to be a good human being, a good citizen. That's what's coming for us, right? I'll read this last verse and we'll close out. It says, and at that time will I bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all the people of the earth. Right, there you go. When I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. And he's doing it right now, right before our eyes, man. The true prophets are back here on the scenes, telling you people who you are, right? Giving you that proper understanding where no one was going to do that. No one was going to do that. No one was going to tell you who you are. Right? Everybody, all these nations were trying to keep that from you. Why? Because they can utilize you. The so-called black man holds on to $1, right, for hours, whereas the other nations, they hold on to for months. So they can actually accumulate some type of wealth within their family. They don't want us to hold on to that dollar and to know who we are and stop fucking with them like that, because they're going to lose money. They're going to lose money. A huge portion of the GDP here in America, right, the economy, comes from you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. We keep the economy running because we keep spending fucking money for them, not with ourselves. So they don't want us to know who we are, right? But now we know who we are. And Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua is going to turn everything right side up. Esau's flipped everything over. We're just going to turn it right back, right side up through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. And that time's coming, man. You know, we're in those times, very beautiful times through the spirit, man. For those who truly believe, those who truly understand, right, this word, you know. But that's all I got, man. Lord wills, edifying, Lord wills, straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rachak Wadash. Again, double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of the great millstone who rule very well, very beautifully. Till next time, Shalom.